Good. Okay, got it. And we'll see, because I sent the link out to, we'll see if people can find it and hop on. So, okay. Annie, Diane, Mish, the hardware store. So, Lahab, take it over, man.
Okay.
All you.
Welcome everybody to the Institute for Conflicts, the archetype of the warrior. Today we have invited three archetypal warriors. They're gonna start to explain what it is to be an archetypal warrior. How does the warrior function? How do the warriors move in society, in the world, in life, in relationship? So these are some of the things we're going to ask. First, we're going to let everybody introduce themselves real quick. We're going to do a round robin. Christy, you want to take it?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Christy Foster. I am in Salt Lake City, Utah. Known Marty for quite some time, so thank you for those of you joining through her. Learning about the archetypes and part of the IFC Institute as well, and a JAMP coach. So happy to have all of you here.
Hi, I'm Diane Manzi. I'm a friend of Marty's. Hi, Marty.
Hi, Dan.
Nice to see you.
And you want to mute yourself, Diane, since Mish is talking in the back? Do you know how to do that?
Mish. No, of course I don't permit.
He's yakking away on the phone. Let me see if I can. Well, Lahab, you should be able to mute her as the host.
She muted herself.
Okay, great. Christina.
Okay. Dr. Eric, you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, Eric Tomlinson. I'm out here in the woodlands, out in the middle of the woodlands in Florida. I'm one of the few people who have power. 2.6 million don't, so I'm very thankful for that. And Lahab said a prayer for me, so it protected my house. I saw this big shell come down over my house, and it protected me from everything. So thank you, Dr. Lahab.
You're welcome anytime. I don't know what I did, but
you were just being yourself. That's all it took.
Fantastic. Trent, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Trent Foster. I work for Christy.
Does Christy know everyone on the planet?
I have my own personal assistant there.
He
God.
even has her last name.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're strange bedfellows.
Yes, Trent's my husband, not my employee. No.
Oh,
Okay.
Doesn't let me
Sometimes
out
he
on.
probably thinks that though, yes.
Yeah.
We're glad you joined us today.
Welcome, everybody. Those who are in sight and those who are out of sight. Welcome all. Today, we're going to start with a brief description of archetypes, and then we're going to move into the warrior archetype. And usually me and Christy on our podcast, When Destiny Calls, we usually start by talking about each archetype and the way they move in the world. So the archetypal pattern is an energy. It's not a physical entity. So that's one thing we need to kind of take into consideration, that it's not a physical manifestation, it's an energetic manifestation. And that energetic manifestation that we call an archetypal pattern moves around. So we can see it in things. So for example, if you go to the ruins in Egypt, you could see the archetypal patterns of the pyramids. You could see the geometric shapes. These have been around since the beginning of time. These we knew before we had a language. We already knew math. We didn't learn math. We didn't discover math. Math was already embedded in us. It just came to light one day, like everything else that's embedded in us. So archetypal patterns shape the way we move in the world. Because they shape the way that we move in the world, they also shape our behaviors and our preferences for things. They shape the way we give value to things or take value from things. They shape our understanding of how the world works or doesn't work. It shapes our understanding of what is important and what is not important. So each archetypal pattern has its own way of viewing, seeing, thinking, connecting in the world. So today we're going to focus on the archetype of the warrior. We've been talking about the other archetypes. You're welcome to hop onto the individuation podcast, the IFC's individuation podcast. We have a podcast on it called When Destiny Calls, and the IFC's individuation podcast. So we have two podcasts, and we talk about archetypal patterns, structures, and mythology and mental health. But we also talk about the other archetypes. So you could also catch us on the YouTube channel. Okay. So the archetypes. So what are the archetypes? So they're energetic patterns that move us in certain ways to be in the world, to see the world. I'll put it in the link for the YouTube channel. I'll put it in the chat. So the first thing we think about when we think of the warrior archetypes, so there are several archetypes. We know that we use usually the description of the four primary archetypes, which is lover, warrior, magician, king, or queen. So we're going to go with the warrior today. And the warrior archetype, the warrior shapes the world we live in because they use the energy of the planet. They use the energy of the earth. They use the energy of movement. They transform things. They are fighters in the world. So they could have many causes. So each cause is worth the fight for them. Whichever cause they embrace is worth a fight. So if it's on the PTA, it's worth a fight. If it's at the front lines, it's worth a fight. If it's in the back rooms, it's worth a fight. If it's in a bar, it's worth a fight. What is worth it? What is righteous? What is right? What is wrong? So when the archetypal warrior moves, they move with right and wrong. Doubt is not a good thing for the warrior. Ambiguity, things a little fuzzy, is very disruptive and very disturbing to the warrior archetype. So today we've invited 3 warrior archetypes to kind of ask them questions about what it's like being them in the world. How do they move in the world? So we'll start with Marti. You want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi, I'm Marti Murphy. I am a tapping practitioner, a jam practitioner, and recently, discovered through you, Dr. Lahab, that I'm the warrior archetype. I would have sworn my husband was and that I wasn't. Well, not that I wasn't, but I would have. And then no, my husband's the lover and I'm the warrior. And now I can't unsee the fact that I'm a warrior. And it happened today. So, yeah.
So Eric, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Eric Tomlinson. Marti, you're funny. Oh, I've always thought you're funny. And muy inteligente as well. So
Should I say lo siento again?
and yeah, say lo siento, okay? And I love your daughter, and I get to see her. I always tell her to tell you hello. Anyway, by the way, Eric Tomlinson, what did you want me to say other than that? Oh, and Trent, Mr. Trent, if you can hear me. I won't say his name because this is being recorded, but I love your son. His name starts with a D, if you remember him. He's terrific.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, he's a good kid.
He really is. He just, oh my gosh, he's just so full of wonder. And I just love, I love the idea of him finding all of that wonder out at his young
Thank you
age.
for that.
Just
Thank you.
tremendous. What
Trent?
did you want?
Sorry,
Is there anything
sorry,
you want me
Dr.
to?
Eric. That's okay. Don't worry about it. I'll
Okay.
pick up later. Trent, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Trent Foster. Don't know a whole lot about the archetypes. You would think I'd be an expert living with Christy. But I'm interested to learn today of how being the warrior has guided me in some of my decisions in life, I guess, right? Because you just do stuff instinctively, but you're going to throw some science at it. So I'm very interested in learning about that.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we're going to start with a couple of things. One, how do you know the archetypes? So to help everybody kind of get comfortable with the idea, think of the movies that portray warriors. What do they portray? How do they portray the warrior? What does the warrior stand for? What does the warrior fight for? What does the warrior believe? What does the warrior think is righteous? What does the warrior think is not righteous? So if you think in right and wrong, you're a warrior. So if you ever think this is right, this is wrong, you're a warrior. If you don't ever have doubt about what is right and what is wrong, you're the warrior archetype. If you walk into a place and you feel there's injustice, you have to speak up, you're the warrior archetype. If you feel somebody is saying something that is inappropriate and you have to say something back, you're the warrior archetype. The lover's going to walk by, they're not going to care. The magician will stare. The queen will say, this is beneath me. The warrior will stand up. The warrior always stands up. So when you see somebody standing up for something right and they're arguing about what is right and what is wrong, those are warrior archetypes. And the way they move in the world is you don't tell them stories. You tell them exactly what you're saying. Because if you try to tell them a story, they're going to get very angry with you. They're going to get angry with you because they think that you're trying to manipulate them. You're trying to take them out of their story. So, Christy, why don't you ask our panelists today? I'm going to call them our panelists. You could ask any of our panelists some of the questions and some of the thoughts that I had about what makes a warrior archetype. So ask them what they believe, ask them what they think is right and what they think is wrong. So ask each of our panelists today.
All right. I'll start with Marty. Because Marty, yeah, I know you well in that you tell me, what is it like, especially with let's talk about your horses that are around your property. How do you feel about those horses and taking care of them and standing up for them? Could you share an example of how you might have seen yourself as a warrior in that?
Oh yeah, I definitely feel very protective of them. And interestingly, the horses around here, they're free roaming wild horses. They're very controversial. People either love them or they hate them. And they're like, they can be destructive to your property. There's no question about it. They're big animals. I had two of them yesterday right here all along the flagstone, but they're hanging out like to get in the shade. I love having them around. And my favorite horse was mowed down last December by somebody who thought it was okay to drive 90 miles an hour through a wildlife corridor and just killed him instantly on the highway that's over here. And I had a lot to say about it. And then I got sent pictures of another horse that had been killed by somebody speeding, and I posted on that next door neighbor at. Oh my God. And it started this whole chain of things because, there was this whole rightness, wrongness going on, about, and I do have that attitude. I am a lead foot on the highway, a self-professed lead foot. I'll do Mario Andretti with you all the way down an open highway with not a lot of traffic in a wildlife corridor. No friggin' way. Like, no way. I will drive like the speed limit or below. And to me, that's the right way to do it. Because the horses that have been killed around here have been killed because people are speeding. And I've almost hit 3 horses. And the only reason I did it is because I was going the speed limit. So to me, it's absolutely the right thing to do is to go the speed limit in a wildlife corridor. And, you know, if you don't want them around your property, you know, put a fence up. Like, that's the way I look at it. They're free roaming. They're going to go where they want to go. So, and I, you know, I definitely have a lot to say about that when that happens. And, I just, yeah, I feel very protective of them. I mean, we're their voice. That's the way I look at it. We have to be their voice. They get mowed down. I'm going to say something about it.
That's a good example. And Marty, just to tie that in a little bit with relationships, like around your daughter or around people you love, you do pull out your sword if there's any kind of threat or
Yeah.
someone might be hurting your daughter or someone you love. Can you tell us about that inner reaction that you get when
Oh,
that
yeah.
happens?
Yeah, well, I'll tell the situation that this happened with my daughter. I just feel this, like, it's literally like, like a volcanic eruption. I love Lahab's face. Lahab and I have known each other a very, very long time. He's married to my sister. But she came up to me. We were in Durango, Colorado, and she said, "Mom, those guys," this is years ago, "those guys called me a bitch," because she had this little kind of cute, fashionable army fatigue jacket on. And she said, I literally go, "They did what?" Like, it was just like, what did they do? And I go, "Where are they?" And I just stormed over. It was dark out, to this picnic thing that they were under. And I didn't even pay attention. And I get in there and I'm like, Adam, you know, the judge pointing like this, "Don't you ever freaking call my daughter a bitch." And I'm like going off on him. I mean, it's just coming out of me. And all of a sudden I'm like, there's 6 guys in here and they're huge. Like, they're huge. It dawned on me in that moment, but I was like, oh, well, I'm going to keep going with it. And then they're trying to tell me they didn't do it. And I'm like, you know, that's bullshit. And she heard it. And I went on this whole thing. And I just said, you know, you need to think about it before you call somebody that. And then I storm out of there and I hear the one guy go, "Jesus," like that. And then I walked up to my daughter and she goes, "Mom, I heard you all the way over here," but she was smiling. And I thought, that's good. She knows that I will protect her in that moment, that I'm not going to take that. Like, I'm sorry, that's like my child. You're not going to treat her that way. So
Yeah.
that's, you know, I would call that probably a fairly classic example of, I feel so protective that way.
Well, that's a good example. Thank you,
Like,
Marty.
I would literally die for her
Yeah,
without a question.
also a warrior statement.
Yeah.
So thank you, Marty.
Yeah.
Trent, we're going to move into you. So Trent, like I said before, is my husband. And yes, he does many things for me, which is very wonderful. He's my IT man as well. Trent has been, I've seen him as warrior in many different ways. He's been coaching our boys since they were tiny in baseball. And one of the things that I was attracted to when I first met Trent was that warrior archetype. I didn't understand that that's what I was attracted to, because Trent has this presence when I'm around him that I'm protected. And I really have never worried about or ever felt unsafe anywhere with him, because I know that he would, like Marty said, he would kill whoever tried to hurt me. I wouldn't even, it's not even in my awareness to be afraid when I've been with Trent. And then watching him in baseball and sticking up for kids and sticking up for the integrity of the game and what's right and wrong is so natural for him. And as I see and understand the archetypes better, I see it every day in him as a warrior. So Trent, maybe explain a little bit about, even just with work and how you stand up for other engineers in the workplace? There's so many examples. I'll let you choose one of how you see interactions with others or how you experience them.
Yeah, I just thought that's how everybody felt, right? I mean, it's like Lahab said, you know, if there's a cause to fight for, you fight for it. And it's just always been, you know, a natural reaction. And I guess it's sort of new and intriguing that not everybody feels and acts the same way. So I think, you know, part of that was probably becoming a coach, coaching youth sports, you know, for many years. Maybe I was just naturally led that way, you know, to take kids and, you know, push them. You know, I always wanted to see them be successful in whatever way was best for them. And some were very talented, some were not, but it was always about, you know, let's do right by the kid. And you know, some of the best times of my life were doing that stuff. In the professional ranks, as Christy mentioned, I'm an engineer. I work mostly in applications, which means kind of taking ideas and turning them into reality. So it's heavy in technology and that kind of stuff. And a lot of that is, you know, sometimes it's a startup with a new idea or whatever, and they are not going to get the advantages of a larger company, say, right? So I always feel like, hey, let's nurture this. Let's get this thing off the ground. This has value. This has weight to it. This needs to come to light to the world. And that's what I ended up doing for my profession. So strange as it may seem, I guess the warrior archetype kind of led me on that professional path. And that's what I do today.
And you've told me, honey, many times people will call you for the fight. You'll tell me, so-and-so called today. They said, Trent, can you please handle this? Because you are gifted at that. Confrontation doesn't scare you at all.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I never thought about it that way, but it's probably true. And, you know, confrontation and fight is one thing. I think doing what's right is completely different. I mean, it's one thing to go looking for a fight. I don't feel like that's really what I do, but you know, as Lahab mentioned, the warrior wants what's right and you know, maybe what's just or whatever. And so that's, I guess, how I react to stuff. And maybe that's why people call and ask for help when, you know, there is a conflict that needs some resolution. Yeah.
Well, they do. I've been married to you a long time, and I've heard story after story of work, people calling you to handle it, which that's admirable, but that is clearly the warrior. So thank you. Thank you, Trent. And thank you for being the warrior. Very important archetype. Dr. Eric.
Yes, ma'am.
So how have you experienced your warrior archetype within relationships?
Well, probably the example I would give, and before I give that example, Dr. I wanted, if I could back up and comment on something Dr. Lahab said real quick. What he was describing, how people are that are archetypes, for a long time, I couldn't distinguish between people who were responding that way, who were true warriors, versus people who were, I don't know, narcissistic, sociopathic, whatever, who contrarians, who like to argue and take up and stand up for others, and they're not warriors. And I always kept looking at, well, what's the difference? How can I tell these people apart from those who aren't? And with the warriors, what they were fighting for was always something bigger than themselves.
Good point.
They weren't fighting for themselves. They were fighting for an idea, an attitude, a sense of protection of what's right that should happen between other human beings. And so when I look at it that way, make myself stop and ask myself what is going on here, it
Yeah.
really helps me to distinguish between those who are really warriors and those who just, you know, who superimpose warrior-like tendencies for their own self-gain.
That's a
Really
great
good distinction.
distinction. Really
Yeah.
good. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, the
Dr. Eric, you're talking about the lover archetype, right? So the warrior is outraged when the lover archetype acts like they are righteous. So that's usually the outrage, is like they're acting that way, but they are not. They
no,
don't believe that. They don't.
no, very good.
Yeah, it's the shadow of the warrior. So
Yeah.
it's always antagonistic.
But I think the example that I'll give is the example that was most surprised by in my life. Not that I hadn't done things like that before, but this one I think probably stood out to me the most because the police got involved. But anyway, I was at a couple's house. They were in a South Chicago suburb. They lived in a area where there was a lot of stuff that went on, you know, crime and that kind of stuff. And we're sitting there and we just finished eating, and some neighbor comes running through the house. It was a summer day, so all the doors were open except screen doors. And he said, "There's a man beating up a woman. He's killing her." And before he even got the words out of his mouth, I was out the screen door, through the garage, looking for something to grab. I saw what looked like a shovel or a hoe handle that didn't have the blade on it. So I grabbed that. In other words, it was a big, long, hard wood stick, thick stick. And I started running toward where I heard the screaming. It was at night, so it was really dark and I couldn't see hardly anything. And then I saw this guy in this backyard. He was on top of this woman, hitting her and choking her. And he saw me coming at him. So he got up and started running, and I ran after him. And before I knew it, I just swung as hard as I could and hit him in the back of the head. He fell down. I got on top of him. And as Dr. Lahab will tell you in our work together in the past, when you got somebody down, you don't let them up until their energy is gone. You just don't. If you do, you're going to get it. So I made sure his energy was completely spent. And I was a high school wrestler, so I didn't have any problem holding him down. And then police came, got the woman, helped her and everything else. And then I was at my house the next day and the police showed up. I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm going to jail for the rest of my life. I was scared to death because here I was, an old white guy, and this guy was, you know, he was of a different ethnicity, and I knew I was going to jail. And they came up to me and they said, look, we just wanted to thank you. We've been looking for this guy for 2 years. He's been beating and choking women for 2 years, and we just haven't been able to find him. So thank you. So I was so relieved, and in retrospect though, I was shocked that I even did that because I really wasn't there. I kind of almost wasn't conscious of what I was doing. It was just pure instinct. And so that's probably my best example of it, Christy.
That's an excellent example, even the languaging. And Dr. Lahab, you can go more into that about instinct and what his instinct was.
Instinct is always the energy that's moving you, right? We don't know what it is, so we call it instinct. We're like, well, why did you go there? Oh, instinct. No, that's the energy that was moving you towards the object that you found. That was the energy that moved the warrior when he heard the call of help. It was not in the conscious mind. It was not there. It was the energy. He says before he knew it, he was already gone. Before he knew what was going on, he was already looking for a weapon. He was already halfway down the street. So, the other archetypes, the lover would say, call the police. The magicians say, is that really our business? The queen would say, I would like to be involved, but I don't think it's under my jurisdiction. So each person, but the warrior will always jump off from the table and go running. And so what happens is usually the warrior archetype drags the other archetype after him or after her.
Mm.
So the other archetypes get up, like they don't want to get up. They don't want, like, you just imagine, you know, people sitting at a dinner table, somebody comes screaming and you're like, oh yeah, this is not good. You're thinking about it, you're reflecting, you're talking about who's going to call who. The warrior is already gone. The warrior's like, you're like, oh, now I have to chase him down the road. No, I don't want to chase him.
We just
Well-
wait till they come back.
Well, yeah, it's the energy, right? So the instincts are the energy. So every time we say it was instinctual, what we're talking about is the archetypal energy. The archetypal energy feels instinctual because it feels like this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to do it. You know, and then the
Right.
police come and you're like, should I have done that? Did I break his neck? Is he dead? Am I gonna go to jail? Because
a
then, because you're reflecting with your conscious mind, you're no longer moving with the archetypal energy. So when somebody like does something like miraculous, you know, something impossible, they say, how did you do it? It's like instincts. That's the energy.
Yeah.
That's the energy that charges you up the hill. That's the energy that holds the hill. That's the energy that screams from top, come and get me. That's the energy. That's not a human being, by the way. So in war, when you hear of these heroic stories, these like not really real stories, what you're listening to is the warrior being caught in the energy. Right? And if it works out, they look amazing. And if they doesn't work out, they're usually dead.
Mm.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Dr. Lahab.
Sure.
I don't know if this was because at that point in time, I had not dealt with my past trauma at all. But when that whole scenario was over with, I felt embarrassed and ashamed. And like I had done something, almost like I'd done something wrong.
Because you're usually not in your energy. So when you're disembodied, when you don't feel like you belong in that energy, because usually that's because of the trauma. So if you've been traumatized over and over again, when you feel that energy, you start to question it. It's instinctual, but then afterwards you start to question, what is that energy and does it belong to me? Is it mine? Is it out of fear? Is it out of avoidance? And then I don't understand why I did what I did.
Yeah.
And that hurts. Every time we don't understand, we don't know, we don't feel secure about something, it starts to shake us at our core. And therefore we can't align ourselves with the archetypal energy that surrounds us, that moves us in the world. Like, so people will say like, I used to be able to do anything. I wasn't afraid of anything. Now I'm afraid of everything. That's trauma. That's not because you moved from a point in time where you were secure and now you're insecure. That doesn't work that way. Something interrupted your trip. Something latched onto you along the way. And that's what trauma does. It latches onto you, right? Because think about it this way. So what happens is the primal brain is activated. When the primal brain in fight and flight response, when it's activated, what happens is everything along that's going and happening is lost, is in chopped up little pieces. Because now all I'm thinking about is survive, 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 survive. So everything that you're seeing along the way is almost like a snapshot. Like snapshot of this. I saw this, but I wasn't sure if that was real. I don't know if I made that up. I don't know if they really said that. I don't know if the guy was screaming in the back or he was saying help. I don't know. I don't know. So all these don't knows, they go in that space. So basically you're not in your body, because your body is like, there are all these pieces that are screaming out at you all the time. They're flashing at you.
That's interesting. And Eric, that's such a great question, because I was thinking, like, I remember a time when I was 13 and I heard somebody breaking into our garage, and I just got up and didn't even think about it and ran out and was yelling at him, "I saw you," like that. And then the cops
Oh my
were like,
gosh.
"You should not do that." And it was just an instinctual reaction. I hear them, they're going to steal our bikes, and I'm chasing them down the street. And then but what I realized is, like, with my Catholic upbringing, like, be quiet, don't be pleasing, don't speak up. And when he would try to speak to injustice, I ended up in the principal's office all the time. And not because I was a bad kid, but because they don't want you to talk. So, like, how does that, like, so then I learned to be quiet. And now that I think through tapping, Jamp, all that, it's like, I can't keep my mouth shut now. When sometimes it's like the pendulum thing. Sometimes I'm like, maybe it's a good idea to not speak your truth in this particular moment. Do you want to speak to that a little bit, Dr. Lahab?
Well, the Warrior doesn't have a tune regulator where the volume control goes down. When they have something inside of them, even if they're gonna sit there and talk it out, they're gonna talk it out. So in their quiet voice, they're telling you what's fucked up with you without yelling. In their regular voice, they're yelling and telling you something.
Mm.
So it goes from that to that, depending on what you've done. They're not going to yell for no reason. There's always a reason they need to yell. They don't, like, they pick a certain reason and say, no, I'm going to yell about that. That deserves yelling. That deserves me being upset. So also there are things that happen to the Warrior that deserve acknowledgement, and some that do not deserve acknowledgement. You know, so the energy moves Marty to run but Marty as a human being realizes how big she is, but she's running towards the fight. She has no idea what's going on. She doesn't know if they have guns. She doesn't know if they have a bat. She doesn't know how big they are. She doesn't know if there's 6 of them. But she runs to it. Dr. Eric does the same thing. He runs towards it. And I'm sure, Trent, you have a story similar to this you're going to tell us about?
I don't know. Yeah, probably.
When
mean,
did you run
there's,
towards danger, Trent?
Man, I'm telling you, it seems like I'm always doing that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, you know, if it's in personal life, professional life. The way I always look at it is, I always choose the hardest path, whether that be the dangerous path or the path that seems impossible or whatever. I always pick the hardest route because it always has the greatest rewards. With risk comes rewards, and it also eliminates competition. And I've done that in all aspects of my life.
Mhm.
Yeah, you have.
But I've had a few run-ins with some umpires and referees that I didn't think were treating my kids very well. All right. I
Right?
mean,
Of
yeah. So
course.
Can I
Yeah.
add some to your list, Trent?
yeah, sure you can.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, I'm glad you joined us. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Scott Fox, and I am an EFT practitioner. So Marty and I have met through that world, and I've relied on Marty for helping me personally and professionally, just as peers. And I appreciate her so much. And I'm grateful to just join in and try to play catch up here. I appreciate all of the expertise. I've been quietly looking at my phone, seeing who all of you are, and quite impressive. So thank you for sharing.
Yes,
Thanks for coming.
Scott.
Wow,
Welcome, welcome.
and Scott, you look smart. I don't know why, but you just look like you're smart. And I love that Victorian style chest of drawers in the background.
Well, I appreciate that. I just leave all that there. But I'll just share a little bit here too. I am presently working with mostly athletes on performance issues, but as we know here, it's really like trauma issues that are underneath
Yeah.
all of that. And it's really great. I love it. And I just appreciate everybody who's out here sharing good information so we can help more people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Trauma's alignment, Scott, it misaligns us. So when we're misaligned, it doesn't take much to push us off the track. We're already kind of barely hanging on. So with an athlete, what happens is they're riding a high and everything is going great. And something happens and it's like, oh no, I can't do that anymore. I don't understand what's going on. I keep messing this up. And with them, it's always is because whatever the incident they had, it triggered a previous trauma. And so usually with athletes, it's injuries and fear of injuries and fear of because the body becomes a huge issue with athletes.
Yeah.
It's like, is it okay? Is it not okay? Is it okay? It's not okay. And they treat it like an entity that they have to check in with. They're not in their bodies. And usually that's when they get hurt, is when they're not aligned. They're not listening to their body. They're talking to it. They're asking it.
Thank you so much for that. You know, it was initially kind of surprising for me when I was working with athletes who were not in tune with their body. You think, well, an athlete uses their body. No. They are not taught to do that as they're a reflection of our society. So thank you again for that reminder.
Yeah. So we walk into the world when we talk about the archetypal energies. We walk into the world. We are being pushed in a certain direction. We want to do certain things. And then people stand in our way. Parents stand in our way. Uncles, aunts, you know, people picking on us, teachers, they say, no, you shouldn't do that. That's not good for you. You should do this. And suddenly now you're questioning which way you're going. Like you had a thought, you had a feeling, and they just threw you off. And that thought and that feeling come from, Dr. Eric called it instincts, comes from that instinct, and that's connected to the archetypal energy, right? You know, when you're in your archetypal energy, it's like, I love Jordan because when he's in the zone, that's the archetypal energy. That's when you know everything that I do is going to work. I know that. How do I know that? I just know that. I know if I put my hand up just 2 inches, it's going to tap it in. I know that. How do I know that? No idea. That's when you're in the zone. They call it, the athletes call it being in the zone. Being in the zone is basically being in your archetypal energy. It's like you have a force field around you. And when you run through things, when you do things, when you cut, when you sway, when you move, you are energized. You actually start to feel stronger, faster. You start to feel more powerful than everybody else on the field. And that's when you're in tune. That's when you suck. And when you are out of body, you could tell this with warriors right away because they become frustrated very easily. So usually warriors have very high tolerance for shit. They'll take shit, listen, and then they'll crack. But when they crack right away, when somebody says something or they hear something or somebody's whining or something and they crack right away, it's usually when they're not in their body, right? They're not, and you could talk about this, Christy. Christy, you see a lot of people who are not in their bodies and you're trying to help them get back into their bodies so they can move with their own energy. Because what happens is you start pulling against your own energy. And it's like, oh yeah, I should have done this, but I didn't do that. And now I feel like shit. Now I'm questioning myself all the time because I'm not trusting myself. Or as what Dr. Eric says, I'm not trusting my instincts. I'm not going with my energy. I'm not going with my natural flow. I'm fighting myself. I'm trying to do something different instead of going the natural way that I move.
I think with the warrior archetype and the body, what I've noticed is the tendency for push till they break.
Mm,
And the cost to that is worth it. I'll hear the languaging of, well, a lot of push harder, and everything has a price. That's a very common sentence too. And I don't care how bad it hurts, no pain, no gain. All warrior language with the athletes that I've seen, they will push until something in the body breaks, and that requires them to pay attention to the body. But
So this-
it's a pretty universal pattern, I think, with warrior, is that push and to the death. And usually it's their death more than other people's death, and that can be emotionally or physically.
Well, you know, like Dr. Lahab said when he was talking about the athletes being in the zone, you're disconnected from your personal self. You just are. You're not connected to you anymore.
Mhm.
You're connected to something that's above you, that's bigger than you, that's spread out everywhere,
Yeah.
that you're finally in sync with, connected with, and are operating as a result of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love all the old black and white Japanese samurai movies from the 60s and 70s and 80s, and they were just wonderful. And they call this energy, they call it the vital energy. You know, the energy that surpasses all other energies. I guess it's like similar to libido, I guess, in psychological terms.
The monks, this is what they commune with, right?
Mm.
So when what they're trying to experience is they're getting closer to God. This is the archetypal energy that we're talking about.
Mm.
They're talking about the archetypal energy. It's godlike because it's eternal. It's always been there. It's always surrounded us. It's always moved with us. It has moved with us. It's like if you're on a field and the child is 5 years old and you throw a ball, and this child takes that ball and like runs around the field like the ball was born to this child's foot or head or arm. And then this other child, you throw the ball and the child kicks it a couple of times and looks at it like, why am I kicking a ball? And walks away. So there is that energy that surrounds children very early on, and you could start to see their movement in the world archetypally. They like to lean into a certain direction. They like certain things done in a certain way. They like to think and talk about things in a certain way. They don't like the other archetype talking about things in a different way. No, we don't do that. We do it this way. The other archetype will go, no, we don't do that. We do it this way. So the archetypes, when they're arguing, everybody's right and everybody's wrong at the same time. Because what they're talking about is their preferences and the way the energy makes them behave, think, feel. So the energy actually has widespread effects. Like, for instance, the archetypal warrior is always attracted to the lover. Always. It's the first thing they're attracted to. I hate that woman. Oh, I need that woman. There is no, it's an instant attraction. It's almost like a siren's call. They don't know why, because that's their shadow. The archetype of the warrior's shadow is the lover. It's the end of the other side of the spectrum. The lover moves with eros. The lover moves as to, oh, that's beautiful. Oh, I'd love to do that. Oh, I don't know about that. I'll think about this. And for the warrior, this is the most irritating thing that can occur in the entire universe. At the same time, they're like puppies. They're like, actually, it's like more like cats with catnip. They're like sniffing, like, oh yeah, I hate this stuff. I hate this stuff. I can't stay without it, but I hate. Why do they talk like that? What is wrong with these people? And so that energy, that movement, that yin yang is always moving them closer together, further away, closer together, further away. They're always reacting the same way. If you have a bunch of warriors at a bar, you're going to have a very loud, annoying table. Throw a couple of lovers in there and suddenly the volume goes down. They're trying to outshow each other that they could actually lower their volume. Look how brave I am. I can lower my volume. Anyway, so the lovers and the warriors always have this thing. So every time a warrior strays and ends up with another archetype, they're always in trouble. The lover is going to cause the most pain to them, but the other archetypes, they have no clue what's going to happen to them. Day in, day out, they cannot predict what the other person is going to do. With the lover, they know. It's the opposite of the thing they would do. So if you're connected to, Marty, if you're connected to the lover archetype, they're going to do exactly the opposite of what you would do. Like, I would never do that. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. Oh, I knew you were going to say that. Now I'm going to have to deal with it. That's always going to be the conversation. That conversation is going to happen in every household over and over again. What's universal about the archetypal energy is that we behave in certain ways that are very similar. And that's why the warrior energy is there. The warrior energy is like, oh yeah, we need to take that hill. Have you ever had a rock fight as a kid? Only a warrior would dream that up as fun. Throwing rocks at other kids. Only a warrior. This is a warrior game. Yeah, I know. I thought you would say that. I thought you would say that. Only a warrior would dream this up. Let's throw rocks at each other and hope we don't injure each other. That'll be fun. Okay, great. So these are warrior games, right? These are the way that my universe is organized. You could always tell the lover archetype among a bunch of warriors because they're always the ones who are either lagging behind, trying to catch up, or looking at them with dismay. Like, what is wrong with these people? What is wrong with these kids? Why do they act this way? They're barbarians to them. So if you want to see the archetypes, I don't know if this is, we used to do what we used to do in the old graduate schools is we would have a seminar on observation where you would go and observe the group that you're going to end up working with. So I was working with young children, so I would go to parks and I would take notes about behavior and what I'm seeing and what I don't see. What's always interesting is as the kids play, they always divide into groups. The warriors are always playing together. They're always throwing. They're always the dirtiest. They're always screaming the loudest. They're always in the mix. They're very energetic. You see the other archetypal patterns are very, very different. You see the lover, you know, the archetypes, they're sitting there. They want to have a tea party, or they want to talk about something, or they want to build houses. And you see the magicians, they're sitting in the corner by themselves, staring at everybody, not wanting to engage with anybody. That will later carry on into their adulthood, where they sit in the corner of the bar. They're not paying attention to anybody. They're just watching everybody. And you see the kings and queens because they always have an entourage behind them. They're like, oh yeah, Misty went that way. We have to go that way. Misty went that way. It was like, and they follow. It's already energetically moving. They're not more than 4 or 5, and the energy is already kind of, you see the kid who's climbing up the tree. You see the warrior right away. You don't, you're like, oh, the kid who falls and gets up and like cleans themselves up and keep going, that's the warrior. They don't cry. They think that's humiliation. Why would they cry? Even if they got hurt, they'll hold their tear. Like, I'm not crying. I don't know why you're asking me if I'm crying. I don't cry. This is very important to them because this is how the energy moves them. How the energy holds you and how the energy moves you. This is how you get sick, because that energy is no longer yours. You're disembodied, you're hurt.
it makes me think about the athletes that you mentioned, and Scott would know this as well as many sports psychologists, that these athletes that get connected with this high, with this zone that you were talking about, Dr. Lahab, they get hooked on it. They get addicted to it. And when they get hurt, they wave to the audience when they get carted off to make, let everybody know they're okay when they're not okay.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me that, again, as Scott would know, once they retire, many of them battle with huge aspects of depression.
Yeah.
Because they miss that high.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Brady's 45. He's putting his marriage in jeopardy because he misses the high.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to me at how powerful it is. It takes you over.
You have to find a replacement for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And my own background is a high school and college athlete, and I've raised one as well. I know, and I've told my son this many times, the game will tell you when you're done. You don't tell yourself. And when that day comes, you better be ready, because it is a letdown of epic proportions that you never dreamed possible. And I think I just, was dumb luck that I migrated into other things that fulfilled that for me, and found competition in other ways and other sports that I could continue to participate in. Even to this day, I still have a major desire to compete. And I have found that on the golf course, because, it's not limited by age, thank God. Right. But and I think the athletes that don't find that outlet, you're right, Dr. Eric, there's depression, there's all kinds of things, a chain reaction of things that happen.
Yeah.
And I've seen that myself. Yeah.
And you're so fortunate to have sons to play that game with. I'm very envious of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody's got it better than me.
Oh man, you do have it well.
Yeah. I want to be conscious of the time. So if anybody wants to stay on, but I want to share about the conference that's coming up, so people know about this. So Dr. Lahab's this is the fifth year.
Yeah, this is our fourth conference.
And Christy's hosting it in Salt Lake City. And did I see this right? Because I'm looking at them, 16 speakers. It looked like there were 16.
We have a lot of speakers.
16 speakers. So if you want to learn more, it's in Salt Lake City, Christy's hosting it, but there's also a way to participate online on Zoom, and they'll all be recorded.
Yeah.
It's a great conference if you want to, learn more about, trauma and just how to help your clients and to help yourself. So it's, if you, I sent out a link, but it's 197 if you do the Zoom version, and it's 285.
Yeah,
for
for live.
And you'll get the content, but the Zoom option for those of you is I know it's in a couple weeks. I looked at the list of speakers, and some of who I saw last year, because I spoke last year. It's incredible. It's really and that's a really, to me, I'm like, that's an amazing offering for that many people speaking, and what you can learn. So and I'll send another link out about it probably this weekend. If you're interested, you can go to the homepage. You want to share anything about it, Dr. Lahab? Or
yeah, we're having get-togethers every night after the conference ends, so people could talk to the speakers and kind of personally get to know everybody and what they do and introduce themselves. We're also Christy has some ideas of we're gonna give something away. Different practitioners are gonna give a service away so if you're interested in giving a service away and getting your name out there, we're happy to have you in the group. We have somebody who's going to come talk about archetypes. She dreams archetypes and she draws them.
Wow.
And she's working
Yeah,
with
she's
an
amazing.
illustration company. It's her and her daughters. They all have dreams of the archetypes and they draw.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think she'll be a big hit. I think she's very interesting. She will show her different illustrations of the different archetypes. We had a very interesting conversation about, are they archetypes, are they complexes? Very interesting. We also
May I ask
have
who that is?
Susan Barlow.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
She's on the schedule. There's also a bio of her on the website with her picture. There's bios of all the speakers on the website with pictures. And yeah, we're looking forward to it. We're very excited to be in Salt Lake. It's usually hosted in Seattle, so it's nice to have a different group, a different city to kind of talk to the practitioners there and figure out who's who. I wanted to, before we, because Marty's, I wanted to talk about another thing of the warrior archetype. The monument, the unknown soldier, or the tomb of the unknown soldier. So do you know that so they have to take 21 repeated steps, which represents the highest symbolic military honor that can be bestowed on the 21-gun salute. The soldiers who volunteered to become tomb guards undergo a strict selection process and intensive training. And so basically the warrior archetype has its own monument, and they burn. There's a flame that burns 24 hours a day and it's guarded. That's the warrior archetype. So when you think of the warrior archetype, think of the tomb of the unknown soldier. That is a representation of how the warrior energy translates into the archetypal energy. This is archetypal energy. This is what, these are monuments to gods.
Yeah, it likes
That-
rituals.
That flame that burns,
It likes rituals.
it's a monument to the archetypal gods. So just I always, it's fascinated me since I've been fascinated by the archetypes. I think it's fascinating to even read about it and kind of learn about it and why it's there and what it represents. And so thank you so much for Marty. Thank you for putting this together. Did you want to say something else? Go ahead.
Well, just to ping off what you said, I was watching this thing about the queen, she passed
yeah.
her guards, and they talk about the rigorous training they go through, and people try to make them laugh. And they talked about like the consequences if they
Yeah.
break stride or laugh. And I'm like, holy cow, like it's so severe, but it's like they're very stoic and they're very embodied, like we do this for the queen, and they
Yeah.
totally believe in that. It sounds similar to what you were sharing. That's crazy, the 21. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So everywhere in the world, the military has always, but they embody the archetypal energy. They worship the archetypal energy. That's what they move from. That's the reason Trump couldn't overturn this government, is because the warrior archetype believes in right or wrong. That's why he kept changing generals, like he was changing dinner salad. He was trying to get the right guys in there to like give him what he wanted. He couldn't get it because it's a very strict, regimented, we have a professional military and there's right and wrong. It doesn't matter what I believe in. We have rules in this military. This is how we think. This is how we operate. And they're the ones actually who stopped the coup d'etat. It wasn't because the rioters, it was because they refused to move.
Can I ask a question
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that, Dr. Lahab?
Yeah.
How does that happen in other countries? Certainly there are coups. Their military is not as aligned with the archetypal energy.
Well, in a large part, the military has become political. So you have political appointees who have the ranks of military officers. They are not military officers. And so what happens to the formation and the integrity of the military breaks down. Because basically I could appoint somebody above you as general anytime I want. And it doesn't matter that you worked 25 years to get where you are.
Got it. So the US military is actually more pure.
No, it's more professional. It's a
More
professional military.
Yeah.
It has professional ranks. We do this, we don't cross here. That's Navy's job. This is Army's job. The Marines do this, the Air Force, they don't tread on each other.
And
They
the
work-
archetype, the
Yeah.
energy of that warrior likes that.
Yes, that's absolutely how the warrior runs. The warrior runs by rules. There are rules for the warrior. Life has rules. It has ways of being. It has ways of acting. It has ways of moving. It has ways of working.
Yeah, the army has to have the same purpose. The people running it have to have people pointed at the same overall energy of purpose. If not, it looks third world.
Yeah, this is where mass exodus from militaries right now. What they have the problem in Russia. He has a huge desertion rate.
Good point.
Because they're dragging them against their will. There is no professional army. It was like, oh, it's a fucking job. You guys are going to try to kill me now with it. It's a very different situation. When you go into the US military, they tell you exactly what you're going to do, how you could stay, what you could stay. Yeah. It's just one of the things in Switzerland. They have a very professional army. Everybody has to serve. Everybody has to go do the rigors. Everybody has to defend the nation. There are professional armies around the world. Our professional army, that's what it does. It's a job. So it's a job with a code. And that's what held us together as a nation. And I hope keeps holding us together, because chaos would break out.
I mean, interestingly enough, when the samurais couldn't find a leader that was in that energy and in that zone, they went rogue. They were called Ronin.
Yeah.
They had no master.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't find somebody worthy to serve.
Yeah. So that's when shit hits the fan. As Ronald Reagan would say.
Lahab, can you mute Christina?
Yes.
Thanks. Just want to keep the recording as clean as possible.
Yeah.
Good.
That's
Well,
better.
even warriors have to do dishes, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Every damn day.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Oh, Trent, Christy's got you. She's
Ah.
got you trained well.
No, I know.
Just break them. That's good. So, well, anything else before we depart? And I mean, anyone knows Christy and Lahab, they do a podcast together and they talk about the different archetypes. And
I put it in the chat.
I saw
good.
that. Okay, that's great.
I put our YouTube channel where you can see our videos. I put that in the chat. We're also on LinkedIn. We post a lot of videos. So,
Yeah.
send us a LinkedIn request. I'll befriend you. You could see all of everything that we post.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
And last week we did the lover archetype.
Ah,
The
there you
lover
go.
and the
Speak to the
vampire.
Yeah.
The vampire.
The other end of the lover.
Oh, Annie, you were.
Yeah, I'm curious, why there isn't a healer archetype?
The healer archetype is the
It's a different set of,
magician archetype. So
Okay,
the
I
magician
wondered.
archetype the healer archetype is actually varied because a lot of people learn to be healers.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So healing is a way of being. So like Mother Teresa was a warrior archetype, but she was also a healer. She was also a representative of, so the archetype of the warrior. So a lot of the nurses are warrior archetypes. They
Interesting.
weren't wanted in the profession. They forced themselves into the profession. They fought for everything they get. So the nursing
Okay.
lobby is very, very strong because they came in as warrior archetypes into the medical profession. So
Gotcha.
not all healers are the same archetype. There are different archetypes.
Well,
in
that's
the healers.
fascinating. Thank you
Yeah.
for helping me understand that distinction. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Dr. Lahab, what's the best way for somebody to figure out what their archetype is?
well,
That's-
it's very easy. I mean, you just make a list of all the movies you watch,
Oh, yeah.
and suddenly you're going to see a trend.
Yeah.
And now, why do I watch these movies? Just break that down. And why am I always attracted to these movies? Break that down, and there you are.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
good way to do
And
it.
if you
I'll
want, and
tell
if you
you.
want specific deep psychological details about it, the King, Warrior, Magician, Lover
Ah.
does it. I mean, it covers it well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. We've done several podcasts on the different archetypes. We've done several on the magician archetypes just because it's close to home. We've done the lover archetype.
Hmm?
We've done the queen archetype. I think we did a little bit of the queen archetype with Karen. We should have a special on her.
Yeah, we need
And
to do a specific one.
So we will have a queen archetype, the king, queen, the ruler, the sovereign archetype, they call them. So we'll have something on them. So yeah, we're very excited. We're gonna meet
I have a
Christy and
question.
Lance are gonna talk. Yes.
Go ahead, Cassandra.
Hi, guys. My question is, so let's say you were warrior, then you
Mhm.
had something happen, and then you're not watching those same movies anymore.
Yeah.
So does that happen when something traumatic happens to
Trauma.
you?
Yeah. That means you're out of your energy.
Yeah, I definitely am. I had a
Yeah.
bad break. So what
Yeah.
you're saying, I totally relate to.
Yeah. So
And
now
I
you're
actually-
afraid of your own energy. Your
Oh, is
own
that-
energy brings you disturbance
Oh, wow.
because the things that you're attracted to are now triggering you.
Mm,
So that's so if you think of two oppositional forces and you're stuck in the middle, and that's how they're pounding you. So you need to, so I would work through the trauma to get back into the physical space of the body. I had one of our coaches, Karen, who's also a presenter. She was on a scooter. She's always on a scooter. She's a queen archetype for those who don't know Karen, but you could watch her video. She got hit. She said, I kept seeing the car, and she landed on her feet. And she's an athlete. She lifts weights, and she like flew up in the air, and she landed on her feet, and
wow.
you landed in the middle of a highway. There were no cars, so that was a good thing, but it shook her up. So I did a jam session with her just because she was shaking up, even though she landed on her feet, even though she wasn't that simple instance of a minor trauma
Mhm.
can lead to all kinds of problematic things later if she just left it. Because she worked through it and we worked through the treatment, she's able to move forward without that becoming an issue. So she could hop on her scooter tomorrow and kind of move in the world the way she was moving before.
Interesting.
You know, another phenomenon related to what you just said, Cassandra, is happened to me. And that's also when I started, I'll just speak for myself. When I started moving past my trauma effects, I started realizing that I had only predominantly been using, which is my predominant archetype, the warrior, but I'd been using it to self-protect my life, my whole life. And once I stopped using it to self-protect from my trauma effects, I started experiencing elements of other archetypes that I had never experienced before, except little tiny bits and pieces over the years. And now I'm experiencing them in a more full way. And so I'm mixing with other archetypes. And it's been, for me, wonderful.
Annie, you had a question?
Yeah, I know this isn't an archetypes call
No,
overall.
go for
We're
it.
focusing on one type, but Marty, I'm curious, how did you figure out that you weren't the lover, you were the warrior? Just from reading the book?
Dr. Lahab told me. It was really that easy. He goes, "Oh, you're totally the warrior." But I love warrior movies. I like romantic comedies here and there, but I'm like, if I had my druthers, I'd watch Braveheart. I would watch I love those period films. And I was like, oh, that's because there's always warrior activity in it.
Yeah.
I always was like, I'm a chick. Like, am I supposed to like this stuff? But I freaking love it.
The Amazonians were all chicks.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that's when Wonder Woman, the new is it Gal Gadot? I always call her
Yeah.
Gal Gadot. When she came out, there was one, it was Batman versus Superman, and the movie was silly, but there was a scene where she's fighting this thing, and I'm like, yes, like I was just like, wow, God. And I mean, I'm like, God, I love her. I love how embodied she is. And
Yeah.
somebody else said, yeah, I don't like the violence. And I'm like, really? Like, I don't know. It's not like I like the violence, but I like the fact that she's so empowered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
warrior.
Yeah.
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 Isn't there a mixture though that's natural and not in conflict?
No, so we carry all the archetypal energies, it's like an imprint, like everything else we're born with. They don't discriminate as to who you are. Your natural tendencies in the world will flow towards a certain amount of energy, and therefore you will be working out of that energy. It does not mean that you don't go into lover mode and try to romance, but it's not the comfortable mode you're in. So the warrior looks like they're singing a German song when they're trying to go into lover mode. It looks so awkward and so clumsy, and it's like, oh, you should never sing that song, right? So, but the lover, they go into song and it's like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. I love listening to that. I don't know why. I have
Dr.
a friend.
Rob, I have a question for you,
Yeah.
and this is an honest question. I mean, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with what you said, but but here's my question, and I don't know the answer to this. That's why I'm asking. Isn't there a level where the mixture can take place and they're harmonious? Because I believe that there are. I believe that there is.
That's what Jung talks about as becoming individuated. The whole idea is to integrate all the different energies into one and become whole. That's the idea of becoming whole. That's the whole concept of Jung's individuation process. Is the more you identify the energies, the closer you are embodied, the more you could integrate the aspects of the energies in your life. You learn what it is to be the lover. You learn what it is to be the magician. You learn what it is to be king or queen. You learn, but your natural tendency since you were a kid is to move in a certain way and be in a certain way. That's not going to change. That's always going to be. So in terms of archetypal energy, it is only because of preference, right? So it is within us that we have a preference to move in the world in this way. The dancer has a preference of moving the dance in a certain way. We have a preference, so the soldier wants to march in a certain way. So everybody wants to do something in a certain way. Well, that's our preference. That you call the instincts. That call we hear first. So the warrior hears the call of battle first. The magician calls, the first thing they hear is the mystery. It's like, oh, there's a mystery. Oh, yes, fascinating. Yeah, I love that. The queen is going to hear that they need somebody to calm them down. They need a sovereign. So when they hear that somebody needs to be in charge, they hear themselves. It's like, oh yeah, it's me. Of course I'm in charge. I don't know what they're talking about. Why do they act like they're in charge? My wife is having this. Oh, I shouldn't talk about that. Anyway, just because we don't know who watches. So I'm going to move on. So our preferences move us in certain ways. So when we have conflicts with the other archetypes, it's usually a particular conflict. And it's always funny. It's because it's reoccurring. Like, I always hate those guys. Who are those guys? So it's usually the same guy. It's the same archetype. That's who you're hating. You're not hating this person. They're not like a row of people that you hate. It's because they move in this archetypal energy, and that archetypal energy is irritating to you, right? So there are things that are not irritating. Go ahead, Cassandra.
And just
Annie, go ahead.
Annie, ask, and then let's. I just want to wrap it up because
Yeah. We're just taking questions. We're
Yeah,
pretty
go
much
ahead, Annie.
done.
So the best way to figure out your own archetype is to read that book.
The best way to find out your archetype, and I can tell you your archetype in 2 minutes if you like.
Okay.
What is your preference? How do you move in the world?
I would have said warrior until
Yeah.
you described queen.
Yeah. Well, warriors and queens, a huge difference.
But I would say warrior.
Warriors don't say I am a queen.
No, they wouldn't.
What
There,
movies do you
there
like,
are
Annie?
warrior queens. They're born to be queens. They have to be warriors.
Oh, that's interesting. What was your question, Marty?
What movies do you like? I wanna
Yeah.
go.
What do you watch?
Natural disaster. Blow something up and save the world.
You are,
Absolutely.
that's the warrior in
That's
you.
warrior.
Yeah.
Warriors always blow up the movie and like save something. Just save that kitty cat. Okay, I'm happy now.
my
They
God,
save the kitty
totally.
cat.
Well, and you were talking about kids throwing rocks, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't do that. But then I realized I rescued kittens.
Yeah.
I worked in a nursing home that didn't even have a candy striper program, but I told them I was coming in anyway. So I realized that's the justice
Yeah.
side. It doesn't all have to be about throwing rocks, right?
No. It's not always about war. War is interpreted in different ways. It's the
Yeah.
energy, right? It's the energy of right and wrong.
Yeah.
It's the
that's me.
energy of good and bad. It's the energy of justice and injustice. There's an energy about it for them.
No, that
It's
doesn't,
very
yeah,
clear.
without a doubt.
And when
I
they
ordered
cross
the
the
book.
line, they know they've crossed the line. They know that they are no longer belong on the righteous path. They say it. They say, I don't belong on the righteous path. I've crossed that line. What they mean is that I can no longer go back to the way I was. I've crossed that line. So that even in their thinking and their process, when they have gone to a different side of the process, they have to admit it. Now, that doesn't mean
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't kill you a second afterwards, but they'll admit it.
Right,
They are
guys.
honest. Doesn't mean they're not violent. They are honest.
Thank
Okay.
you so much, everyone. We'll do more of these because
Yeah.
it's enjoyable. And
Yeah.
everyone, thanks for being a part of it and being here. And if you can join us online or ever.
We'd love to have all of you.
Yeah, we would.
Yep.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
everyone.
much.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you
a great
very
weekend.
much.
This was,
You too.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank
Thank
you,
you very
Marty.
much.
this was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, that was really good, bro.
Yeah, that was good. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.